lights that I just got off of eBay, which I think are pretty cool looking lights. They look a lot like the 2020 style with how it's a little bit more angular. It fits in with everything just fine. I've had them on for about a week now, and I'm pretty happy with them. They are really bright. The high beams are not particularly bright. They just kind of light up a small area right in the center, a little bit higher. And they do work good if you're going down a straight road in the dark, but if you're on any kind of bends, you don't really have any more light around the side. That's my only complaint. But these lights put out so much, the low beams, that you really don't even need the brights that much. Everything is basically just fine. These did not say on the listing that I saw that they had sequential turn signals in them, but the connecting of these guys I thought was a little bit challenging. At first I had it to where the rings would light up amber when the truck was running. You turn it off, they would go back to white, and I didn't even know about the turn signal part of it, so it was just going to be the original turn signal bulb that was flashing. But I didn't like how they turned yellow when the truck was on, and then when you turn lights off, you just have like a yellow. Basically, the turn signal was lit up around the whole time instead of being a white light. So I figured that out, and I'm going to show you guys how it has to be connected. So here we go. To take these off, you probably already know, there's just a trim panel right here. You have to gently pry out these two tongs that go in there. Unfortunately, mine just broke, not one but two of them, so I right now have no way of attaching this to the truck because I was missing both of these also. So we've got an 08 truck. These things are all pretty brittle at this point. I just need to go ahead and replace all those guys. But take that off. There's a 10mm bolt right here. You have your two 10mm screws on the top. I've already got them off. So basically, just slides out like that. And right now I have a mess of wires in here that have to be taken care of. So I'm going to sit this where I don't scratch everything. Alright, could not find any zip ties at all. So, I don't know. We're just going to see. Just tape this whole mess up. I don't know. So there's one connector, or not, it's not a connector, it's just a wire loom coming out of the headlight that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, 7 connectors going into it. So when I first got it, you can understand why I may have, everything pretty much worked as well as it needed to, but I then later realized that it also has sequential turn signals. So you just stick your existing bulb in there like that. This socket also from your old headlight. Everything else no, that's a lie. You also need the socket for this. However, it doesn't have a bulb plugging into it. It has another connector going inside of the light. This is how the headlight knows if the parking lights are on or not. And it turns these rings on even if you didn't have the ignition on. You still have your daytime running lights on. And I can't, there we go. I'm actually going to upgrade these to LED. I'm going to put on a load equalizer so you don't have a hyper flash. I hope that works with this. Roll that up into the whole thing. I think I did. All I'm going to try to do is put the LED in. I've used these bulbs before. These are Oxito, I don't know, something like that, from Amazon. They're actually a switchback, so they would be white in like parking light mode, but then they turn yellow when you put your turn signal on. I'm pretty sure on here, if you put LEDs in, you lose the parking light, so it's just going to be a flasher, which with everything else on this light, it should be fine. You're not going to notice it missing. Where is my socket? Bulb down in the socket, and put it back in. Now, almost definitely, this thing would just have a hyper flash doing it like that. Let's just see what happens now. Yeah, so I got hyper flash, and I guess the turn signal on here is trying to keep up, but it can't quite do that. Of LED versus the amber, they will not hyper flash when you have the four-ways on, the hazards on, but definitely is brighter than the left side. So I'll turn it off. That guy does turn back on. It matches the other light, which is, I think, a better look. Just parking lights on. And then all the way off. Just the ignition off. You turn the ignition off. There's a couple second delay, and they go off. They also get a little bit brighter when it's just DRLs. When the headlights come on or parking lights come on, they dim just a little bit. Try to see if we can make heads or tails of the wiring at this angle. So your parking light connector goes right where it normally would. You are plugging it into just like a base of a bulb looking connector. So that turns on the side light. Right here is the turn signal. You put your regular turn signal bulb in there. I just put in an LED bulb. Off of that, so okay, that actually comes right off of the main wire harness coming out of there. It comes right over into there. But you plug, this is the turn signal coming out of the truck. You plug that into this black connector on the headlight assembly, and then the next one down the line is this gray connector, which goes into the actual headlight itself, onto your existing socket. That's how you wire the turn signals. The daytime running light is just this one little connector like this. This is the supplied harness that you connect to the fuse box that turns on the daytime running lights, and that runs down, and you just connect this to one of these connectors on either side. There's a little bit of a weather seal over it. You can slide up over it. Right here is where that harness for the daytime running lights, right now I just kind of have it just running up here and just kind of going right into the fuse block there, which is not how it's going to be permanently, I hope. But the harness is going through right here. I want to try to zip tie this so that the part of the wire that has the insulation around it like that is where the hole is, because it kind of wants to go where it's like that. That's going to eventually chafe that wire through and cause, well, that one little fuse there to blow. But I just kind of ran that down around below the radiator, kind of like up just in the bumper area for now, and then it comes up over on the other side and just plugs into the other headlight just the same way it did on this side. As far as inside the fuse box, this is what comes with it for the DRL lights to light up. You pull out your ignition fuse. That is the third one in from this second row right here. You take your little tool there, pull that fuse out, and then I'll pull it out here so you can see it. But it has a place for 2 fuses. It comes with the yellow fuse there, which I think is like a 5 amp. You put your 10 amp fuse that you just took out in here, and then just slide the whole plug back in to that fuse slot, and that's how you add the fuse. That way, every time the truck tells the ignition to turn on, it's also now going to be telling the DRL lights to turn on. And it may have been another issue with the way I had this thing wired up, but at first I had this flipped around where the wire was going that way, and I don't know if the polarity, I mean, it's just a, you know, it's a fuse, it's just supplying power to it, but just run it this way. It seemed like it, when I ran it the other way, it was having the lights turn on orange instead of white. You can try, it doesn't hurt anything to try it either way. Maybe it's just in my head, but I thought that's the way it was, and I flipped it around and everything was working the way it should. But that's an up close for the fuse block of installing the DRL harness. Alright, so we got it sorted out. I've got a normal flashing turn signal LED on the inside there, and I have the sequential working. And just so you can see, that is the turn signal, that is not the hazards. And the way I did that was I just took one of these little guys. These are LED load equalizers, and they come with the little suitcase connectors. I went from the black wire that goes right into the housing, that's the ground, and then the other one I tied into, there's this extra connector that doesn't connect into anything, but it's part of the turn signal circuit. So I just figured that I would just use that since it's not doing anything else, just crimped it onto that. So just run it positive to the ground, and now this has been flashing for a little while. This is starting to get a little bit warm, but basically you want to try to put this somewhere that it's not going to be right on top of plastic or something that can melt or get damaged by heat, and also a place that gets a little bit of airflow so that it can help cool it down. It has like little fins on it. But I mean, how long are your turn signals really on anyway? I mean, this has been going now for probably about a minute, and like, I can still completely hold it, but I can tell it's getting a little bit warm. So that's how you do that part of it, as far as upgrading it to an LED bulb and not having a hyper flash. Okay, so if you do break it, a little bit of E6000, just use this on my E36 speakers over there. Just put a little bit on. So these guys both broke off on the other side, these two little tabs, but it stayed inside, so it was about, you know, a third of the way down. So I just put a little bit of this glue on the broken part, pushed it all the way back in, held it firm for like 30 seconds, put a new clip that I could find over here. It's staying up there pretty good. I wrapped some painter's tape over the corner of it there to hold it in place and let it dry. I think that should work good enough and still allow it to come apart again easily if it needs to. Guys, LEDs in the top, around the side, and you can see the top ones are the amber and the bottoms are the white, and then they change color. There's enough brightness from each row, I guess, so that you see the two different colors. So that's the one issue that I see with these guys, is you do not get any front turn signal with the ignition off. That seems to be a little glitch in the system. Don't really see where it's that big of a deal. How often would you on the side of the road, you don't have your front hazards if the ignition is off. It's like the only thing that really matters. So that's the one thing that I've noticed. One more of these guys. These are like 4 for $8 on Amazon. And they come with the little suitcase style crimp-on connectors. And I showed you on the other side. And this is what keeps it from flashing fast. Alright, so let's use these guys right here. Is one side of it is closed off for one of the 2 wires. So you have 3 holes on it. This one is going to go into the one that has the hole or no hole on the other side of it. So it only goes in so far, it doesn't pass all the way through. But you can do that after you do the other part, which is pick your wire. In this case, basically the yellow wire is a turn signal, the black is a ground. So we're just going to be going between those 2. On the other side, and I guess just to keep it the same, I used this one right here, which is the only connector that doesn't have anything to go into it, but it's just part of the turn signal circuit. When the turn signal flashes, there's 12 volts flashing on that. So you take this guy and push this side of it right here. I don't know if you can see that is open. You take that, push it over this wire like that. So it's just loose on there right now, and I have the open end facing this way. So then take the red wire from the load resistor and you slide it all the way in and over it like that. I have it just a little bit down from the end of the connector. And then you take some pliers with everything, with the other wire, you know, fully pushed in there, you go over it and you squeeze the metal clip all the way down so that it crimps over both wires. It goes straight through and pierces, goes around and kind of goes around the edge of the wire. And you just close this up like that, and then theoretically these 2 wires are now connected. This is not the type of a connection you want to do for anything important. All this is doing is keeping my turn signal from flashing fast. This is probably the only time I would ever recommend using this for a circuit that is absolutely not necessary, because these things are not very reliable, and also the wire you go around, you're actually cutting that wire down a little bit because it has to bite into it, so it's tearing some of the threads. So I do not recommend you use these things, but they do have a purpose, and this I think is a acceptable use for these types of connectors. So again, now we're going into the black ground wire. I have the closed side facing the connector. That doesn't really do anything except help my OCD. That way the wire can run away from the connector and not like okay, that one's not sliding over it very easily. Okay. Alright, well, that train horn is definitely on a truck because we don't have any trains that close. Anyway, so the closed side of the connector is facing that way. That way you don't have a wire coming out like this and looping back around. That's just wrong, in my opinion. So we're going to slide this guy all the way through till it goes to the other end. Just kind of hold it. And this time I'm going to hope this thing just slides right through. That's how it's supposed to go. Just go around to the other side just to make sure it's all the way seated down. And then you have that guy connected in there. You can kind of, if you want to try to tidy some of these up, I really just don't think there's any way of really getting any of this that tidy, because you don't want to take this thing up. This kind of needs to be out and get some air, because it will get a little bit warm. But that's how you wire in the low equalizer for an LED turn signal hyperflash fix.